that's a part of our lease to him, isn't it? Or who is handling that parking?
It's been 15 years since Mike Chipwit came to town as head of Salt Lake's most powerful and controversial agency. He controls an annual budget of more than $8 million.
I take high blood pressure pills and smile a lot, and just consider it comes with the territory.
We could actually maybe clear out the center part of the block and use it for parking.
As redevelopment agency director, Chipwit's job is to make our city more livable, to wipe out urban blight and nurture private development through low-interest loans and cash incentives.
Now let's check a couple of them and see.
To encourage building American towers, the RDA gave the developer land worth $1.5 million, gave them the land for free. That's just one example of how that public-private partnership can work. The more buildings that go up, the more money the RDA makes. If a parcel of land generates $10,000 in tax revenue before redevelopment and $100,000 after, RDA gets the difference every year for the next 30.
The redevelopment agency has helped do this.
The system's watchdog is the City Council. It doubles as the RDA board with veto power on every pending deal. To date, no major project has ever been voted down. Planning and Zoning Board Chairman John Schumann.
RDA's got a lot of power. They control the dollars. And the person who controls the dollar controls the deal. And they've got the control.
I think the redevelopment agency is a good tool, and that's what it is. It's a financing tool. It's a lender of last resort for cities, and I think the money's got to be placed in a very prudent manner, and I have a problem with the way it's being placed. And we've been talking to the RDA for a year and a half.
Businessman Michael Martin is not alone. Critics charge the RDA is more interested in expanding the skyline than in rehabilitating what's down at the street.
They're a development agency for developers, and it goes back to the American Tower. So the big projects seem to be the RDA projects, but the entire city, to make a city what it should be, you've got to fill in the infill areas. You've got to help retail. You've got to help housing. And it's got to be a balanced program.
So basically, this is the new site elevation that we're going to be doing on this particular building. These guys are now digging the planters.
32-year-old Michael Wright is a small developer who's bought into the idea that big is not always better. With $10,000 3 years ago, he acquired some dilapidated buildings. By pinching pennies and doing the work himself, half a West Side street has been salvaged. He's brought out the offbeat personality of an area no one else would touch.
You put up one high-rise on a corner, and it basically, if those individual tenants were spread out over an entire block, it would take a square block of downtown. If you rehabbed a lot of those buildings and took the tenants that are now in the high-rise and spread them out over the landscape a little bit, you'd get a more livable sort of thing. You wouldn't get a high-rise and then a hotel and an empty building and two boarded-up buildings, and you'd have utilization.
I think maybe one of our problems in the redevelopment agency over the last few years is that our shortfalls have been very obvious, and our victories have been taken for granted.
Redevelopment's most visible disappointment looms on 3rd West across from Pioneer Park. And 3 blocks north, the overly ambitious Triad, the only phase of a 3-tiered project to get off the ground. City Councilwoman Sydney Fonnesbeck.
And no matter what anybody says, I think Triad was a success as far as the city is concerned. And I know that there have been some local people hurt by the bankruptcy, but the city hasn't been hurt by it.
I think basically what happens is the city tends to look for these home run approaches to its development. They looked at that for Adnan Khashoggi, who's sitting in jail today.
Back in 1984, one of RDA's projected home runs, Block 57. A major developer acquired 66% of the block. The RDA pledged to buy and condemn the rest to expedite a block-wide $150 million project.
They didn't ask you, they didn't come in and talk with you. They just merely sent out a letter and said they were taking your property. And to me, that is not the American way to do things.
Dan, that'd be $14.75 as your change.
In 1984, magazine shop owner Bob Nelson ran a viable business on 57. Because of a lawsuit he filed with 4 other retailers, he operates that same business today.
It's like $5.26.
Well, we were sending a message to them that we weren't going to just sit by and let this happen and let them come in and just acquire our property.
We never got a chance to talk with them before they sued us. Now, how do you become sensitive to a person's need talking through their attorney? And it was effective. I guarantee you, it didn't slow us down, it stopped us dead in the water.
Also dead was the Block 57 mega development deal.
Yeah, who's got the parking here?
Chipwit says the lawsuit tipped the scales. Others say the vision of a 50-story office tower was unrealistic.
The city wanted a building that was larger than this market could ever accept. And a building that size could not be financed, so it was dead from the beginning.
Tom Bacon works for Gerald Hines Development.
And that was one of the parameters they wanted. They wanted us to take the entire block and redevelop it all at once. It's too big for one developer to take the risk on.
In 1989, the RDA is coordinating 4 new deals. The State Employment Security Building west of Heber Wells, office towers on Main Street and the northeast corner of Block 57, and the Centerpiece Project, a new $65 million sports arena immediately south of Triad.
To me, it's clearly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because it's going to be a facility that'll be a community resource that we can all be proud of. Respectfully, Larry H. Miller.
In just 2.5 months, the RDA and Jazz owner Larry Miller cut an agreement. The RDA will kick in $20 million, Miller will pay the rest.
Hopefully by July, Larry Miller will be digging dirt. I think that's really a statement of the ability of Salt Lake City to respond to opportunities.
Let's say about 1,600 feet times 15 feet is how many square feet?
While there's strong community support for Miller, some think the deal was drawn up too fast. Architect John Pace.
I think the city and all of the residents ought to have a big concern on the appropriateness of how this is coming together, and it better work. We don't need another project that was started and not completed and becomes a white elephant. It isn't just a project that fails in, it's a community that's failed.
We're ready to apply.
Actual application wasn't made.
A grassroots movement to gain more public control of RDA decisions is gaining momentum. People are meeting and talking all over the city.
Well, they were talking about it yesterday.
Mayor Palmer DePaulis is also promoting change. He currently has no vote when RDA decisions are made.
It's just unbridled right now. They just have the right to do whatever they want without any, as the council, as board of directors. So there's just no check. There's no check mechanism at all. What I think is needed is the kind of advisory board or check and balance system that would provide some context for those individual development projects so that the whole city benefits.
And it's time that we start developing a plan to get us where we want to be in 10, 15, and 20 years.
Downtown business people are working on yet a different way to impact the system.
There is really not a downtown constituency that pushes for anything.
There's a move in the downtown business district to pool resources and hire a professional planning staff, an agency to counterbalance the RDA and represent retail interests.
And yet, are we as a downtown community affecting one iota the decisions that are being made by the redevelopment agency? And again, I don't find fault with Mike Chipwit or the council. I find fault with the people who are at this table, including myself, because we have been apathetic for the last 20 years.
In 1989, apathy is being converted into action. There's no shortage of concern and interest in what happens downtown. The key is to pull our fragmented visions together.